Welcome to chapter 23 of the book of Isaiah. Before we get into this chapter, I'd like to mention figures of speech. Figures of speech are very interesting. Here's a book written by Bullinger back, I think, in the 1800s, towards the ends of the 1800s. And in here, he goes through all the figures of speech in the Bible and explains them. And Isaiah uses figures of speech a lot. I'm just going to go through a few of them here that I saw in chapter 23. And as we read through it, hopefully you'll remember these as we point them out. But one type of figure of speech is called the metonymy or metonymy, and it's is the use of one item's name to represent another item. In particular, the representing item usually has a close association with the represented item. Now with that, the figures of speech, and I come to the conclusion that Tyre is a metonymy for Israel or Jerusalem. And you say, oh no, he did that the last time with Babylon and so forth. But I see these, and I'll bring it out here in a few minutes of why I come up with that. It's not I just didn't pull that out of my hat. But figures of speech that are in this chapter are things like in verse number 1, it says, a matter of Tyre, shriek, O boats of Carthage. Well, boats don't shriek. They don't talk. And then Then for she perished, and no longer do they come from out of the land of Chittim. She is led captive. Well, she is is the people, not the city. Carthage is not a woman, she. And the people are led captive. In verse 2, it talks about the traders don't pass through the sea. Well, no, they don't, because boats pass through the sea. Right down here, traders of Phoenicia passing through the sea. The boats pass through the sea, so it's an elision. They left out of the people and the boats. In verse 4, it says the sea speaks, but the sea doesn't speak, doesn't talk at all, it just waves. So that's a figure of speech. And verse 11, a hand never prevailed against the sea, unless it was Jesus, I suppose. Then it has a daughter of Jerusalem. But, well, a city can't have a daughter. A city is a bunch of buildings with people living in it. And then Tyre in verse 16 is addressed as a person, a harlot city. Well, a city can't be a harlot. It's just buildings and streets. So these figures of speech are used throughout this chapter, and probably much of Isaiah. I haven't brought a lot of that out, but when I came to this chapter, one thing that really pointed out to me that this is something different here, and that is in verse 15. I'll just go down there right here and show it to you. And it says, and it will be in that day, Tyre shall be forsaken for 70 years as the time of one king, as the time of a man. And after 70 years, Tyre will be as the song of a harlot. Well, Tyre was, as we go through it and explain, was never forsaken. And for 70 years, it just has to be Jerusalem, what it's talking about right here, just as Babylon. And we'll go through other places and point them out where I believe that is the case. Now, Tyre, the physical city of Tyre, we'll go to our map, is over here north of Jerusalem, right within 12 miles of the border of Israel, 12 miles north of the border of Israel. And these people were called the Phoenicians back in these days. And we'll mention here Kittim, right here is Kittim, is right up here. And then Carthage, it'll be mentioned in this chapter, and Carthage is over here in what is today Tunisia, and the Kittim is what's in today called the island of Cyprus. The city of Tyre was first mentioned in Joshua 19:29 and 35 as a border of Israel. And then in Micah 7:12, a border for the Assyrians as they were coming down. In 2 Samuel 5:11, 1 Kings 5:1, 9, and then chapter 9, 11, and 12, it talks about King Hiram of Tyre, who was a friend of both David and Solomon, and who helped David build the city and the bringing goods. And then there was a man who came from Tyre, whose name also was Hiram, as the king, and he was a worker in charge of all the works for Solomon. And then Tyre is also mentioned basically throughout the Old Testament as being destroyed, which it never was. It's still around today. It was attacked by Nebuchadnezzar, but there's no mention of it actually falling to Nebuchadnezzar. And then Alexander did take it, but by building a causeway out to the island city. But these destruction throughout the Bible, and it's in Ezekiel 27:32 all the way to 28:19. It's all about Tyre. And to me, it's all in the future. Then there's 29:18 and 20 verses, Joel 3, verse 4, Amos 1, verse 9 and 10, and Amos 3, verse 11, Zechariah 9, verses 2 and 3, Jeremiah 25:22, and 27:3, and 47:4. The destruction, but it wasn't destroyed. So exactly what it's talking about, I believe, is the future of Israel and Jerusalem in particular. In the Bible, it mentions in Ezekiel 27:12 and 38:13 the merchants of Tyre, just as in the book of Revelation talks about the merchants. And then it mentions this Carthage. And Carthage over here is in, like I mentioned, in Tunisia. That's where Hannibal came from, the general. During the Punic Wars against Rome, he came all the way across, went across through Spain, all the way down into Italy against Rome, almost defeated Rome. Amazing feat. And also in Joshua 5:1 and 12, it mentions that when the children of Israel, sons of Israel, left Egypt and they went on the other side of the, I'll see the Dead Sea on here, it's over here somewhere. They came up and then they came down and around. As they first came into the promised land, it was right by Phoenicia, and they first gathered fruit from that area. It mentions Phoenicia, Joshua 5:1 and 12. And then right below that is Mount Hermon, and the Phoenicians, it mentions in Deuteronomy 3:9, called it Mount Sirion. So this was Tyre and Phoenicia, and then Sidon is a little bit further north of Tyre, 25 miles north of Tyre. And it mentions Sidon also in Exodus 28:20. Other places in the Bible that it mentions these places is in with Elijah. And then I didn't write the place where it's at. So I think it's in 2 Kings. But Elijah was sent by God to Sarepta, which was in the area of Tyre and Sidon, and he lived with the widow of Sarepta. Then Jesus mentions the ones from Tyre and Sidon. They came to him, and then they were healed by him. It mentions that in Mark 3:8, where they came to him, and then they were healed by him in Luke 6:17. Then he came up to that area, and he healed the Canaanite, the Syrophoenician woman's daughter, and that's in Matthew 5:21-28, Mark 7:24-31. All this happened up there. And then Paul stayed in Sidon. The boat at his going to Rome, the boat as it left Caesarea, stopped in Sidon, where he was able to spend a little bit of time with his friends. So this is the Tyre and the Sidon. Now, Jesus had an important thing that he had to say about that. He was talking to the Jews. And this is in Luke 10:14, which I think is very important. This is something we really overlook and we don't realize. And that is what he said is, "Woe to you, Chorazin! Woe to you, Bethsaida, which were by Galilee! For if in Tyre and Sidon took place the works of power which took place in you, even earlier they would have repented, sitting in sackcloth and ashes. Furthermore, to Tyre and Sidon it will be more endurable in the judgment than for you." The Jews, the crucifixion of Jesus was such a important part of history. The most important part of history of the world is when God became flesh, and by the Jews crucifying him, they condemned themselves and their generations to some horrible things being sent throughout the world. And Jesus is showing how bad that they were, the things that they did with Jesus, that it's going to be a repercussion to that, even going as far as mentioning the judgment. So this Tyre and Sidon is, I believe, is a metonymy for Jerusalem or for Israel. So now we'll go into the text, and it says, the Rima of Tyre, Tiru, Tiros in the nominative, of is in the genitive, belonging, the matter belonging of Tyre, belonging to Tyre. Shriek, O boats of Carchidhonos, that's that city of Carthage in Africa, where that today is, I forgot the country now, and that's not Algiers, but I forgot the name. But anyway, for she perished, and no longer do they come from out of the land of Chittim. Now this Chittim is the city that's on the island of Cyprus, where the Phoenicians went. She has led captive the people from Tyre. Well, they weren't. These things did not happen in history, but the Jews were. Jerusalem was, if he's talking about Jerusalem, Tyre. To whom have the ones dwelling in the islands become likened, traders of Phoenicia passing through the sea. Now he uses the figure of Tyre in the Phoenicians, but again, it's a figure that he's using and relating to the Jews, and the Jews passing through the sea, trading and so forth, in much water. A seed of traders. The traders of the nations, as a harvest being carried in. And be ashamed, O Sidon, that's the city north of Tyre, said the sea. Well, see, the sea doesn't speak, so these figures are used throughout here. Even the strength of the sea said, and the sea didn't talk, I travailed not, nor gave birth, nor nourished young ones, nor raised up virgins. So these are the people. Be ashamed, O Sidon, to me at Jerusalem. But whenever it should become audible in Egypt, grief shall overtake them concerning Jerusalem, Tyre. Go forth to Carthage. Shriek, O ones dwelling in the islands. And this is like what happens in the book of Revelation. All these traders are looking and they see it destroyed. Was this not your insolence from the beginning, before she was delivered up? Who planned these things against Tyre? Is she inferior or not strong? Her merchants were the glorious rulers of the earth. Now, we haven't seen all the things of Israel yet and how great it will become, I believe. I believe that Israel is going to be attacked, and it will destroy this giant nation of Islamic nation, becoming the world power, and then the beast will take over, and in that period of time, Israel will be a world power, and her merchants will be having to deal with trade throughout the world. The Lord of hosts plans to disable all the insolence of the glorious ones and to dishonor every glorious thing upon the earth. So now it's talking about the earth. This was not just Tyre. So this all doesn't happen yet. It's not all, has not come to pass. This is still in the future. Work your land, for even boats no longer come from out of Carthage. So this is, to me, is after the destruction of Jerusalem and Israel. And your hand no longer prevails against the sea, O one provoking kings, the Lord of hosts. One provoking kings. Now this could be talking about an Israel being ruled by the beast, which I believe. The Lord of hosts gave charge concerning Canaan to destroy her strength. And they shall say, no longer in any way should you proceed to insult and to wrong the daughter of Zion. And if you should go forth to Kittim, that is in Cyprus, not even there shall there be rest to you. So the beast possibly wronging the daughter of Zion, the end of it, him is coming. And if you depart into the land of the Chaldeans, which is in the southern part of Iraq, today the Chaldeans were the Babylonians, actually a people from southern Mesopotamia area that came up and took over Babylon after the Assyrians had defeated it and destroyed the city of Babylon twice. The Chaldeans came up and rebuilt Babylon, and then they were destroyed by the Persians. And if you depart into the land of the Chaldeans, even this was made desolate from the Assyrians. Well, Babylon was. Not even there will there be rest to you, for her wall has fallen. And Babylon. Shriek, O boats of Carthage, for your fortress is destroyed, and it will be in that day, Tyre shall be forsaken for 70 years. There it is. This is not Tyre. It wasn't forsaken for 7 years. This is exactly what the prophet Jeremiah prophesied. The 70 years they would be taken to Babylon. The land would lie fallow. Nothing would be growing until they came back, which they did. As a time of one king, as a time of a man. Chronos is chronology. We have that's a time. And after 70 years, Tyre will be as a song of a harlot, and Jerusalem. Well, it was still a harlot city, and stayed that way. They made their own laws as far as the written oral law, which had nothing to do with God's written law. As they were in Babylon, they had nothing else to. They didn't have a temple or the temple worship to sacrifice for sins and all these things. So they came up with a new oral law. And by the time of Jesus, it had taken hold, and they were teaching that more than they were teaching the real law. And Jesus came against it and their power, and they killed Jesus. So then they were destroyed, and they are still around today. It has come back in 1948. But it says, take a harp. Stray, O harlot city, being forgotten, which it was for 2,000 years. Play the harp well. Sing much, that the memory of you takes place. And it will be after the 70 years, God will make a visit to Tyre, and he did to Jerusalem. And again, she shall be restored. Jerusalem was restored to her ancient state, and shall be a marketplace to all the kingdoms of the inhabitable world upon the face of the earth. Now, that could be a future commerce coming through Israel. And I don't think it's coming through the city of Tyre in Lebanon today. And her trade and wage will be holy to the Lord. Well, now, why would it be holy to the Lord if it was really coming through the Lebanese city? I just don't see that. So here it just shows that it's going to, whatever the rebuilt state of Israel, that again, possibly during the 1,000-year reign, that things will be brought. It mentions people of the nations bringing things to Jerusalem and also to the New Jerusalem that comes. Not to them shall it be brought, but to the ones dwelling before the Lord. So it's not even that it has a city, it's the ones that are dwelling before the Lord, even all her trade, to eat and to drink and be filled, and for a compact memorial before the Lord. So the Lord is now the center at the end. After the destruction of Israel and Jerusalem, it was returned, like I mentioned, and now it's a compact memorial before the Lord, standing rightly before the Lord for this 1,000-year reign until the beast comes back and he's released from the abyss. Now it gets worse in chapter 24. The desolation of the inhabitable world, which has not happened, so we're going to see this future vision that Isaiah is portraying for us, and I hope that you will join us in chapter 24, and God bless.